We all want some level of safety and security. Firefighters, construction workers, EMT. They're all there when you need them to help manage life's chaos. In retirement, you want that same level of safety, but who is there for you to make sure your money will last? Brian isn't just there in case of emergency. He's there so you don't have an emergency with your money. A safer retirement doesn't mean a boring retirement, but a prepared one, full of the things that inspire you. This is Safer Retirement Radio with Brian J. Decker.
Welcome to Safer Retirement Radio with Brian J. Decker and Arrin Wray of Decker Retirement Planning. I'm Mark Elliott. Glad you are with us. You can find out more about Brian and Arrin and the team just by going to the website, deckerretirementplanning.com. Find out where the offices are as well. There's offices in Washington and California and obviously in Utah. deckerretirementplanning.com. There are a lot of cool things on this website besides finding more about Brian and the team, but you can also go to under the heading of Safer Retirement Education and download 12 different things just for your information. Checklist challenge, sample income plan, 3 principles of retirement book, and of course, Brian's book, The Decker Approach. That's all available to you. It's there for your information. You want all, download whatever you'd like. That is under the website of deckerretirementplanning.com under the heading of Safer Retirement Education. Now, today we're going to be talking about something that nobody really wants to think about. Well, that's not true, because sometimes spouses are happy if their spouse passed away, I suppose. Most of the time, they're not. And so if you have questions about this, it's a big deal, because a lot of people have that concern. Well, what happens to my loved ones if something happens to me, right? Will my spouse be okay if something happens to me? Will my kids? You've got to have a strategy for that. 833-707-3030 is the number to talk with Brian, Arrin, and the team. 833-707-3030. Brian, I would imagine this is not one of your favorite topics, but it's maybe one of your more important topics you talked with your clients at Decker Retirement about.
Mark, that's right. We do. We're not attorneys, can't give legal advice, but in the 40 years of doing this, Mark, I've seen hundreds and hundreds of estates go sideways because of their estate documents not being drafted correctly. So we will be talking about the importance of having a properly drafted will, power of attorney, living will, and trust. We're going to talk about where the landmines are, the corrections, the fixes. We're going to talk about taxes, the change in tax when a spouse passes away, the change in household income. We're going to cover a lot of information in this next hour. So let's dive in. When it comes to wills, power of attorneys, living wills, and trust, Arrin, let's start big picture. Every person has 3 parts to their estate. They've got their retirement accounts, qualified accounts. Those are not typically, they're not part of the will, power of attorney, living will, trust. They're not part of the estate documents because they've got specific beneficiary designations attached. So call that part 1. Part 2 is their non-qualified estate, which typically at the very least is their home, their real estate, their residence. That at the very least should be in a trust. And then 3, you have everything else, your residuary estate that's governed by the will. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that we minimize as much as possible any probate. One sentence can do that. A properly drafted will has a pour over provision. It pours into the trust. So I'll use myself and my sweetheart, Diane. So when Brian, if he predeceases Diane, I do not use the language saying that Diane receives my residuary estate. If I do, I've just opened the door to probate issues. What I want to have it say is, I bequeath my residuary estate to the Brian and Diane Decker Revocable Family Living Trust. By doing that, I died, my assets didn't die, the trust didn't die, there's no probate. So in a properly drafted will, one sentence, the pour over provision, is very, very important. And yet we don't see a pour over provision in about half of the documents we review. Now, again, we're not attorneys, can't give legal advice, but that is a major problem. So, Arrin, anything else you'd add on the will before we move on?
No, the will's pretty straightforward. I think you hit it right on the head, Brian.
Okay. Now, what happens when, like Monty Python says, you're not quite dead yet, and you need a document to act as you, that's your power of attorney. So the power of attorney document is where you're not dead, and who are you going to choose as your agent to act as you. So there's three parts to this discussion. And Arrin, you jump in here. The first is continuation. Who are you going to choose? Let's say you got three children. Are you going to choose one? So in this situation, let's say that Brian and Diane have three children. One's in Seattle, one's in San Francisco, one's in Salt Lake. Well, it's going to be much more convenient for the person in Salt Lake to act as power of attorney because they are close by. They can respond to the things at the house. They can go to the bank. It's very convenient for them. But then sometimes human nature kicks in, and the other two children are sad, thinking that I don't trust them as much. So many times you can kill two birds with one stone by listing all three children as co-agent in my power of attorney. They all feel loved and respected, but most of that is going to be divided and conquered by the local one. They can all communicate. They can feel like they're taking care of the surviving parent and be of help. So that's something that we recommend that people consider. It's not a choice of one, two, or three. They can put all three in there. And the subject of continuation, Arrin, what else would you add?
The only other thing I would add to that is think about the types of scenarios where the power of attorney is going to be used, right? These are typically some type of mental incapacitation. You get old, you don't have the ability to make sound or rational decisions on your financial and legal matters, or you have some type of an illness, typically Alzheimer's or dementia that kicks in, and you need somebody to step in and literally be you, sign documents, pay bills, move money around, all of those types of things. And whoever, either whether it's an individual person or multiple, like you're describing, Brian, you want to make sure that you can trust that person or those people to do a good job with those responsibilities, right? Because they're literally acting as you from a legal standpoint. And so you want somebody with a good head on their shoulders, going to be able to handle those matters accordingly, be able to take care of those things. You want to just make sure that you are putting the people or person in that scenario or in that role that's going to fit well with the types of responsibilities that you need them to take care of.
Right. And when it comes to the powers section of the power of attorney, you're going to want to make sure that you do not grant power to make any edits or changes to estate documents. So what happens when Brian's in a coma and one of my kids, well, that would be my wife would be primary. So probably Brian's gone. Diane is in a coma. One of the kids steps in and uses power or authority of power of attorney to change all the estate documents in their favor. You got to make sure that that power is not in there to change or edit any of the estate documents. Okay, number two is compensation. Compensation is divisive among siblings. So if you choose one of your three children to be your power of attorney, and compensation is part of it, here's what compensation says. There's two problems with compensation. One is the divisive nature of it. Second is how vague it is. Compensation typically says this: agent is due reasonable compensation acting in their capacity. What is reasonable compensation, Arrin?
That is a giant gray area. So you'll have, depending upon how the kids felt about you, what they think their time is worth, the responsibilities they were assigned, just how they were feeling that day, they can kind of use that as a blank check for anything they feel quote unquote fair or sufficient as compensation. There's not really any strict guidelines around it.
So we typically recommend that people take compensation out. Keep reimbursement. If there's any expenses incurred by helping the estate or the surviving parents, then that's fine. Reimbursement is fine, but compensation, typically you strike that. It's an honor to help your parents, especially when you're part of the distribution, the beneficiaries of that estate. The third part is the trigger clause on a power of attorney. When does it become active? Now, there's positives and negatives on these choices. So let's spend a few minutes on this. On a power of attorney, typically they're active on signature. The good news is active on signature is if Brian has dementia, Brian does not want to be hauled into two doctors to show that he's incompetent. I mean, that is emasculating with a capital E. I'm going to put on my best face. I'm going to fight this tooth and nail. I don't want to have proof that I'm incompetent. Nobody wants that. That's a horrible situation. So generally the trigger clauses are on signature or when two doctors determine that there's incapacity. So the benefit of on signature trigger clause is it's just very convenient. The negative is, Aaron, I'll never forget. I was doing planning for a couple. They were fighting like cats and dogs. And at the very end, she was emailing me saying, I don't know if I'm going to stay married to this guy. And they'd been married for 30 years. And when we reviewed their documents, they had on signature power of attorney. They had authority and power granted to each other to clean each other out. They could have called from Cabo and said, I don't like you. I've cleaned out your stuff. And so good luck. Sayonara. So we don't want, if you have a good relationship with your spouse, on signature is best. If you don't have a good relationship with your spouse, you've got to have two doctors determine competency to maintain the estate. Aaron, what else would you say on the trigger clause?
Yeah, I think you hit it to kind of sum that up. If you have a great marriage, don't feel like there's going to be any issues with the finances or a theoretical divorce in the future. Active on signatures, by far the simplest, easiest way to go. If you think there might be some rocky ground there, you want a little bit of added protection, having that based off of a counsel, whether that be doctors or your specific family members, is a little more, I guess, sure way to be able to add an extra layer of protection there.
Now, you mentioned family counsel. That's a third way. I was going to bring that up too. That's very important. If you've got dementia or Alzheimer's in your family, make sure that you know that you can edit the documents to family counsel. Who better than two doctors? Who better to know when one of your spouses is losing it than the surviving spouse and the other children? Family counsel is a legal option to a power of attorney for a trigger clause. So instead of two doctors, have it be family counsel. Then if one spouse is starting to lose their mental capacity, you don't have to drag them in front of two doctors. You can just seamlessly make that transition and move forward. Aaron, that's a great point. Anything else? We've covered wills. We've covered power of attorney documents. What else before we move on?
No, I think those two are great. Let's go ahead and jump to the next one.
And we're going to jump to the next one when we come back right here on the Safer Retirement Radio with Brian J. Decker and Arrin Wray of Decker Retirement Planning. Again, though, this is super important. There's a lot goes on in this planning process, and it's an opportunity for you to walk through the Safer Retirement process with Arrin, Brian, and the team at Decker Retirement. 833-707-3030 is the number. Again, there's no cost for this whatsoever. I still think it's one of the more important phone calls you can make. 833-707-3030. 833-707-3030. We're talking about planning for surviving spouses. We got more to get to. Stay with us. We're back with more with Brian and Arrin right after this on Safer Retirement Radio.
Is the price tag on everything giving you sticker shock? From groceries to gas, the cost of living is skyrocketing. But if you think inflation is painful now, just wait till you retire. Ease inflation's impact on your retirement dreams by calling Brian and start preparing today. 833-707-3030. Again, that's 833-707-3030.
Uncle Sam might need a loan soon from you. We have over $35 trillion in national debt. Where do you think the money to pay for that is going to come from? Taxes. Believe it or not, taxes are at historic lows right now. But how much longer will that last? A Roth IRA conversion might be a good option when planning for your retirement because you can pay lower taxes now and avoid potentially higher taxes later on. Brian Decker and the team at Decker Retirement Planning have seen taxes rise and fall. They know what options you have to potentially reduce the amount of taxes you pay in retirement. Call the team at Decker Retirement Planning and schedule your tax analysis today. 833-707-3030. That's 833-707-3030. Uncle Sam needs money. Don't let him take it from you. 833-707-3030. Investment advisory and insurance services offered through Decker Retirement Planning, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Investing involves risk. Always consult with a qualified tax advisor before making any decisions regarding a Roth IRA conversion, as there may be additional tax considerations.
You're listening to Safer Retirement Radio. If you like what you hear on today's show or have questions, drop by DeckerRetirementPlanning.com or call 833-707-3030 to talk to Brian.
Welcome back to Safer Retirement Radio with Brian J. Decker and Arrin Wray of Decker Retirement Planning. I'm Mark Elliott. Again, if you have questions, 833-707-3030. We're talking about the challenge of losing a spouse. And it can be obviously a huge emotional deal, but there's also a lot of financial hits in there as well. When you lose a spouse, the spouse is not going to have as much money because you've lost some of that. You lost a Social Security, might have lost a pension. There's a lot of things that could have happened. So you're not bringing in as much money, but yet you got more going out because of taxes. There's a lot of whammies besides the emotional, and the emotional is maybe the toughest to get over, I would think, Brian.
That's right. There's a big emotional factor. We want to make sure that the emotion is what it is, but we want to make sure that financially we know as part of retirement planning what kind of change in income is going to happen when one spouse predeceases the other. It's different when spouse A passes. Is it going to be the same when spouse B? Well, sometimes that's true if there are pensions, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes. If there's pensions with no survivability, that income stream dies with them. But what we want to do is just finish up the estate documents, and then we'll get to the income streams and how those change when one spouse passes. Arrin, we've covered wills and power of attorneys. Now let's talk about healthcare directives. Healthcare directives is who you want to pull the plug and have that discussion. Well, if Brian is married to Diane and we've got 3 children, I'm going to choose Diane as my agent. She's going to choose me. And secondary, again, when it comes to continuation, we can list all 3 of our kids as co-agents, successor agents to spouses. We don't have to pick one, we can pick all 3. The benefit of that is they can talk together, talk it out, gather information, feel included, feel trusted, respected by the parents. So when it talks about that, and anyone with medical experience, medical career, they have an advantage of being in that slot. Next, we want to make sure that any document has a good trigger clause. This is the most important thing in a healthcare directive or power of attorney healthcare. This is where you don't want to leave the HIPAA clause in there as the trigger, because if you do, 1 or 2 doctors can go up to your agent and say, well, geez, Brian looks pretty bad over there. He's been in a coma for 45 days. Doesn't look good. What do you want to do? I don't know. His odds don't look very good. Now, the trigger clause in the typical healthcare directive say that you can pull the plug when, and I'm going to list things that, in my opinion, more accurately belong in a power of attorney than in a healthcare directive. They say things like that when they can't remember things, when they have a terminal illness. Well, forget that they might be around for 6 more months. You want to pull the plug now? So what we recommend go in there is the following. So we keep the HIPAA clause in there for the trigger, but we add this one sentence. It is, quote, "It is my wish to have my life ended when I am kept alive artificially, period. When I am kept alive artificially. When 2 doctors come in and say, see that machine in the corner, that's keeping your mom or dad alive. That's not what I want. My kids know that's not what I want, and that's the time to pull the plug." So when we add that sentence, we have 2 doctors giving their opinion to their agent, or one of our children, that is their opinion. that mom or dad is being kept alive artificially with that machine. Now it's very easy to make the decision to pull the plug on mom or dad. Without that, we've seen children in anguish over whether or not they killed their parents because they made their best guess. They guessed that mom or dad that was the right call, and then they read in the paper or they read online about so and so that came out of a coma, shows a big smiling face in a hospital bed, boom, came out of a coma after 6 weeks, and they wonder if they just killed their mom or dad. So we want to make sure that the agent that makes this critical decision is diminished of any of these guilt trips of thinking that they killed a parent. Anything else that you would add on continuation or the trigger clause before we go into the pain meds, the comfort measures?
No, I think you put a good overview there. And I think a lot of people need to understand as well that these documents are not just a blank slate that you fill everything in on. There's a couple like initials that you put next to specific choices. And then, like Brian has referred to, they give you the ability to add additional instructions. And so that's kind of the main focus that he's had so far. At the beginning, you'll talk about whether you do or don't want the comfort measures, do or don't want any life preservation through artificial means, the trigger clause, all of that stuff, and then kind of tie into that all of those specific wishes or kind of parameters that you'd like to put into place in addition to that.
Okay, now half of the healthcare directives that we review don't have comfort measures. They're all over DNRs, do not resuscitate. They're all over no artificial hydration or nutrition. Well, if you don't have comfort measures, you're going to suffer when they pull the plug and there's no hydration or nutrition, you will suffer. Terry Schiavo, I just will never forget that name in Florida. 30 years ago, they pulled the plug on her and the nation watched her last, oh gosh, it was over 2 weeks and she suffered and then she died. So you want to make sure that you have morphine, you have pain meds, even if it hastens your death. So want to make sure that that's in there so that you don't suffer. Anything else on the healthcare directive? Because we've covered wills, power of attorneys, now healthcare directives, and the big one is still coming up, and that's the trust. Now, we won't get through this on this segment. We're going to talk about trust for probably well into the next section, but the trust document is the distribution document because when you die, the residuary estate flows into the trust upon your death via the pour over provision. So when it comes to the trust, there's four key parts that we look at. One, again, is continuation. Who do you want to be your successor trustee? My wife and I are trustees of our trust. Who do we want in there as successor trustees? If we have 3 children, it can be all 3. Remember, whoever is your executor of on your estate that handles the will, they have very little to do, very little responsibility because the pour over provision. Whoever is in place as an agent for power of attorney, they're going to act as you. They've got to be competent, smart, ready to act as you, as your agent. And whoever makes that decision for your healthcare directive, you want to make sure is competent. But the heavy lifting is in the trust because those are the people that are going to move your assets from your estate and follow the directions on how it's all going to be split up. So again, you can list all 3. The compensation clause, for reasons that we've already covered, causes problems among the siblings. If you have one of 3 kids listed as your successor trustee and they're getting compensation, quote, reasonable compensation, it's divisive, and they're listed as a beneficiary anyhow. Now, if you're listing someone that's not a beneficiary of your trust, a friend or someone who's not receiving anything, then for sure, make sure there's specific compensation. Maybe give them $10,000 to do the job of distributing your estate. But if they're already beneficiaries of the estate, keep the reimbursement clause, strike the compensation clause is what we recommend. Now, the third thing is competence. You want to make sure that the competency of your trustees in the trust are determined by two doctors, not friends, not children, two doctors. But the biggest one, the reason why we have children never speak to each other again, is something that we're going to talk about on the other side of this break. But this is the tangible asset distribution section of the trust that says that all tangible assets are to be divided equally. So you've got three children, mom and dad are gone, and the tangible assets are your cars, your house, your Steinway, whatever, and you're going to supposedly divide those equally. And the eldest gets to choose first. Well, the eldest is no dummy. I'll take the house, and then there's quiet, because immediately now you know that this is not going to be fair. And many children never speak to each other again. So we'll talk on the other side of this break on how we fix that.
So think about that. You lose a spouse. Now your taxes go up the year after, right? The year of the spouse passing, you're filing your taxes joint. But the next year it's single. Now you're getting one of the biggest tax rate hikes you will see in your life. And then you're trying to figure out, how do we put all this together? Wills, trust, the healthcare directives, the financial directives. There's so much that the team at Decker Retirement Planning are going to help you figure out, because at the end of the day, it's about you. How can they help you? And by understanding all of this that they do, and as Brian said at the start, they're not estate planning attorneys. They certainly understand this world. They can help walk you through all of these legal documents, but it's super important. 833-707-3030 is a number. No cost to chat with the team. They're here to help if they can. 833-707-3030. I still think it's one of the more important phone calls you'll make. 833-707-3030. Brian and Arrin back with more Safer Retirement Radio right after this.
Your story is unique, and so is the legacy you leave behind. Connect with Brian Decker at 833-707-3030 to start writing the chapters of your legacy and ensure it reflects your values and dreams.
When you crash your car, you get it fixed. When your computer crashes, you get a new one. But what will you do if you've been saving in a 401k or an IRA and the market crashes? If you're in your 30s or 40s, you'll likely be just fine. But if you're in or near retirement, you could be in trouble. Brian Decker and his team at Decker Retirement Planning are here to help. They can run a risk analysis to see if you're too heavily invested in the market. Are you confident that a Wall Street crash won't wreck your retirement? If not, call 833-707-3030 today to schedule your risk analysis with Brian Decker and the team at Decker Retirement Planning. That's 833-707-3030. Crashes happen. Question is your retirement ready? Decker Retirement Planning, 833-707-3030. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Investment advisory and insurance services offered through Decker Retirement Planning, Inc., a registered investment advisor.
Glad you're with us today for Safer Retirement Radio with Brian J. Decker and Arrin Wray of Decker Retirement Planning. Again, the website, deckerretirementplanning.com. Find out where the offices are. You can find out more about Brian, Arrin, and the team. And you can also go there under the heading of Safer Retirement Education. There's 12 different things you can download, including Brian's book on retirement, The Decker Approach. That is available to you. Download any or all. 833-707-3030. If you have questions, you actually want to talk to somebody, you got some pressing questions, 833-707-3030. I'm Mark Kelly. Glad you're with us today. All right, Brian, you and Arrin are going to wrap up kind of some trust chatter to start this segment.
Right. So at the end of the last segment, we talked about the trust, the nuclear option that causes children to never speak to each other again when you talk about dividing or distributing an estate, is when the trust is read on the tangible asset distribution section, where all tangible assets are to be divided equally. Well, what are tangible assets? Well, that's your house, your cars, your jewelry, your artwork, your stuff. All that stuff is to be divided equally, which, by the way, it's impossible. And the oldest gets to choose first. So the oldest picks the house, and that's when the quiet sets over the meeting and they realize there's no way that this is going to be fair. Because once you pick the house, the other tangible assets added up all together are not going to equal anywhere close to what the house is. So we add in 4 sentences. These are called liquidation clauses to make it fair. Sentence 1, house and cars are to be sold with proceeds equally divided. Sentence 2, refer to Appendix A for specific asset transfer instructions. Appendix A is where you give Sally the wedding rings that she wanted, you give Susie the wedding dress, you give Johnny the fishing poles and the guns. It's whatever they wanted, but that's Appendix A. Sentence 3, anything not on Appendix A is to be sold/donated with proceeds equally divided. Sentence 4 is the catch-all where it says rights of first refusal apply. That means that if Johnny wants to buy the house, he has to buy out Sally and Julie. So those 4 sentences make it fair and make it possible to have a smooth, fair transition of an estate. Without those 4 sentences, in my opinion, Aaron, there's no way. What else would you add to the trust discussion, Aaron, before we move on?
Yeah, one recommendation I have seen helpful is for any of the tangible assets that you're going to distribute. Typically, an easy way to do that is to just get everybody together that's going to be a beneficiary. So, if that's all of your children, just have a family meeting. Just say, hey, look, we're not going to be around forever. We're going to be putting some estate documents in place to plan for the point in time when we pass away. Is there anything specific item wise that you would like to inherit at the point in time that we pass away? That way, everybody has a chance to be able to speak up. If there's disagreements about who gets what, you can resolve it at that point in time so that there's not infighting at the point of your death. And like Brian said, you just list those things out in Appendix A. And if you think there's going to be any confusion or if there's maybe multiples of an item, I have also seen people take pictures of those specific things and add it into that Appendix A. And so you have the ability to do that to eliminate any confusion that might be there as well. But again, that just gives everybody the chance to be able to speak up, get all those issues resolved now while you're still alive versus them fighting over everything in the house at the point in time that you pass away.
Well said. When it comes to putting together Appendix A, Aaron, I think that's brilliant. Where you have them over for Thanksgiving or Christmas, or you have your iPhone, you go to FaceTime, you walk around the house. Hey, Johnny, Sally, Susie, anything that you really, really, really want your name on, let me know. Or they can walk around the house with a sticky and put their name on stuff. So don't be surprised if you see on the front door that Johnny wants the house. Susie wants the Mercedes in the garage. And it won't work like that. You'll tell them that the large assets are going to be liquidated. But if there's anything, and by the way, I've seen some really fun transition notes on this topic. Surprisingly, a lot of kids pick the casserole dish that they've grown up with that's been around the table as long as they remember. The guys usually pick the fishing equipment if they have great memories fishing with dad. Wedding dress, wedding rings. Usually the girls want mom's wedding dress, wedding ring. Anyhow, you go around and you nail that down easily by taking Aaron's advice of having the kids look around the house and putting their names on that. Okay, Aaron, now that we've covered the estate documents, what changes in the planning that we do in meeting 3, Aaron, we talk about what's going to happen. We cover a really tough conversation. What's going to happen if one of you dies today? And we always throw the man under the bus. So, John, you die today. Sally, what's going to happen? So we take us through that conversation, Aaron.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a lot of times people put together their income and plan that they're going to be around for about the same amount of time when in reality, there's a lot of factors to consider, right? There's gender differences, age differences, any health or genetic type differences. And so it's very likely that one spouse is going to outlive the other. Might be a small period of time, might be 10 or 15 or 20 years. And so you want to make sure that when you are going through the preliminary planning process like we do, you account for that you know that eventually one of you is going to live a little bit longer than the other, and that you have hedges or protection measures in place, planning specifically for that to make sure that that isn't a huge issue at the point in time that that shows up. So there's a number of different things that we look at when we go through that review. So the first is going to be any specific income streams. So one that'll be applicable to pretty much everybody is going to be Social Security. So the way that it works is at the point in time that one spouse passes away, the surviving spouse then receives the higher of the two Social Security income streams. So if the husband's receiving $40,000, the wife's receiving $30,000, husband passes away, she then gives up her own income stream, gets the higher of the two. And so that is a reduction in Social Security of the lesser of the two amounts. Now, the effect is going to be the same, vice versa. Let's say the wife passes away first, husband just gives that amount up, keeps his own. But irregardless of who passes away first, there will be a reduction from a Social Security standpoint. So you want to make sure to account for that first off. The second is any other outside income sources. So many of our clients do have pensions. And a lot of times we here at Decker Retirement Planning are helping you make the decisions on what pension option would be best suited. Most of the time, not every time, but most of the time, the specific company that's offering that pension will give you multiple choices to pick from. Some might be 100% survivor benefit if you pass away before your spouse. Others might be a partial amount. There's kind of different flexible middle ground between those. And so based off of your plan, whether one or both of you have pensions, the way that everything financial situation wise works together, we will help walk alongside you and guide you to the best outcome as far as the specific pension option that you should pick. But if you already have chosen that, let's say you went to the 0% survivor option to try to get the higher amount, we want to make sure, again, to build protection in place so that at the point in time that you pass away, it's not a huge hit from both a pension and a reduction in that Social Security. So we'll account for those things as well. So those are the two major things that we'll look at from an income stream standpoint. Also, if there is a time period that you're still working prior to retirement, maybe you're still a few years out, or if you have other supplemental income that's dependent upon one spouse or the other surviving, maybe you have a part-time job or a business or something else that you're running, we'll account for those things as well. The focus here really is just making sure that the surviving spouse will have sufficient income at the point in time that one of you passes away. Again, so that's not, hey, we lost 80% of our income. I don't know how I'm going to pay for my monthly bills. Those types of things that are going to cause some problems down the road. So in addition to that, we also want to account for how the taxes are going to be handled. So this is one very often overlooked aspect of survivor risk, is that right now, it's very likely that as a married couple, you're filing taxes from a married filing jointly status. So what happens is one of you passes away. For that year, that tax year, they still allow you to file your taxes jointly. But the next year and every year thereafter, you then become a single filer, which means that even if you have about the same amount of taxable income coming in, your effective tax rate or the total amount of taxes you pay goes way up because you're now a single filer versus a married filing jointly couple. So there's a number of things that you can do pre-planning wise to prevent that from being a major increase in your tax bill. So let's kind of go through those one by one. The first is going to be the type of tax money that you have. So high level, there's going to be three different types of accounts. You have your IRA, which is a pre-tax account. This is the traditional 401k you have through work. If you've opened up a traditional IRA by yourself, this is money that's pre-tax. When you pull money out of those accounts, you're going to pay your regular income taxes. There's the post-tax accounts, which are Roth IRAs, and then you have your non-qualified funds, things like your bank accounts, brokerage accounts, that you're just going to pay taxes on the growth of those funds. So one of the focuses we often have is helping clients with IRA to Roth conversions to help minimize the amount of funds in those pre-tax accounts, again, the traditional IRA, 401k funds, so that when one spouse passes away, you have other sources of more tax-friendly or non-taxable, in the case of Roth, money to withdraw from, so that you're not getting hit with a massive tax increase at the point in time that one spouse passes away. So there's a lot of pre-planning from a tax standpoint, IRA to Roth conversions, spending down some of those pre-tax accounts versus the more tax-friendly accounts early in retirement versus later. All of those things can make material impacts on what the net tax effect to the surviving spouse is going to be at that point in time. So that's the first one. Brian, anything you'd add to that?
No, keep going.
Okay. So the second part of this is going to be on the time planning here. So again, we hope that both of you have a long life. We hope that both of you die within 6 months of each other. You have a great retirement together. But the reality is, again, that there may be a big difference time-wise between when you're going to pass away and when your spouse is going to pass away. And so tied to the tax planning, tied to the income planning, again, we want to plan for longevity risk. And so there's very often times we'll run scenarios that say, hey, one spouse doesn't have a great health history here. What if they were to pass away at, say, 75 or 80 and the other spouse lives to 90 or 95? And so similar to the alternative scenarios we can run for various outcomes, we can also help run plans for clients that show you, hey, here's mathematically what the outcome of this scenario is going to be for you, and then just help you make decisions based off of that. Is that income going to be enough for you? Is that going to be sufficient? Yeah, you might have some reduction in expenses for healthcare and food and some other things because it's now you versus a couple, but you're still going to have to pay for housing and insurance and property taxes and all those other types of things. So again, making sure from a numbers standpoint that we've given you that information to make informed and educated decisions off of. So that's from a numbers standpoint, from a tax planning standpoint, really what we focus on there. So before we shift over to talking about some of the emotional side of things, Brian, anything else you'd add from a mathematical or a financial standpoint there?
No, but if you're going into retirement and you've got someone that is not in great health, when you're planning for survivability of a pension, Arrin, talk about scenarios where the client's health, it looks like he's going to survive the spouse. In that case, you would have zero survivability in your planning. But in the case where you think that the other spouse will probably outlive the person with the pension, you'd want to have 100% survivor. So well, I just covered it.
Yeah, and that's correct, Brian. The one other thing is, again, and this is pension dependent. Some options have this, some don't. I have also seen additional options where you have a lesser amount, and then at the point in time that one spouse passes away, it actually bumps up. And so you can have various, typically they'll have anywhere from like 5 to 10 different options listed as far as how you can select to have those funds work. And really, it is just making sure that your scenario fits well with the specific option that you're selecting, right? There's not a one size fits all. It's not like everybody should do the 100% survivor or 0% survivor. There's a lot of middle ground. And again, it depends upon how much of the pension is your part of your total income, whether both spouses have a pensions or whether they don't, the health differences, the age differences. There's a lot of different factors that we'll consider when giving you recommendations on what option pension-wise would work best for you. So just know that there's going to be various things that we consider on that, but it is an important decision, right? Especially if that pension income is a large portion of the total income that you're going to be receiving in retirement. You want to make sure to make the right decision because they don't let you change that after you've started the income. So you want to make sure to walk through that stuff. And we're more than happy to show you examples of those things, run different scenarios for you, show you what the options would be from a mathematical standpoint, again, just to give you the information to make those educated decisions.
So again, that number is 833-707-3030 to talk with Brian Arrin and the team at Decker Retirement. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot of things they've thrown out at you. We still have another segment to go. But again, that number, No cost, no obligation, no pressure. Get your questions answered. 833-707-3030, 833-707-3030. Brian and Arrin back to wrap up today's Safer Retirement Radio right after this.
Uncertainty in the markets doesn't have to mean uncertainty in your financial future. With the right approach, volatility can be an opportunity. Let Brian Decker and the team at Decker Retirement Planning help you navigate market changes. Call 833-707-3030 today.
When you crash your car, you get it fixed. When your computer crashes, you get a new one. But what will you do if you've been saving in a 401k or an IRA and the market crashes? If you're in your 30s or 40s, you'll likely be just fine. But if you're in or near retirement, you could be in trouble. Brian Decker and his team at Decker Retirement Planning are here to help. They can run a risk analysis to see if you're too heavily invested in the market. Are you confident that a Wall Street crash won't wreck your retirement? If not, call 833-707-3030 today to schedule your risk analysis with Brian Decker and the team at Decker Retirement Planning. That's 833-707-3030. Crashes happen. Question is your retirement ready? Decker Retirement Planning, 833-707-3030. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Investment advisory and insurance services offered through Decker Retirement Planning, Inc., a registered investment advisor.
You're listening to Safer Retirement Radio. If you like what you hear on today's show or have questions, drop by DeckerRetirementPlanning.com or call 833-707-3030 to talk to Brian.
Welcome back to Safer Retirement Radio with Brian J. Decker and Arrin Wray of Decker Retirement Planning. I'm Mark Elliott, 833-707-3030. If you have any questions, you want to get some answers, maybe about something we're not even talking about. Today, we're talking about really the loss of a spouse and the challenges, wills, trust, all those things you need to put in place. 833-707-3030. All right, Brian, you guys are going to wrap it all up in this final segment. Good luck.
That's right. Arrin, keep it going.
Yeah. So to kind of continue from the previous segment, a couple of things that you also want to be aware of that you can have as kind of a safety net or a fallback plan is a lot of times at the point in time that one spouse passes away, you might not want or need as large of a house or property as you are currently living in. You want to downsize, you want to simplify, you want to get rid of the yard work, you want to be closer to your kids. And so we often see a downsize where you might sell your house for $1 million, buy something for $600,000, and then you have a cash injection that provides you with additional income, maybe to supplement or replace some of that lost income from either a pension reduction or lost Social Security or some other income that got reduced at the death of that first spouse. So when we are putting together the financial plans that we build for clients, we don't include the equity value of your real estate on there. We focus specifically on what we call liquid assets, your IRAs, Roths, non-qualified funds, bank funds, those types of things. So you also have that additional safety net of either tapping the equity or outright selling the house through a downsize that can be an additional source of funds if there were more income needs than you were currently able to sustain based off your current income. So the last thing that we want to touch on here is avoiding some of the emotional mistakes when you have one of the spouses pass away. So there's going to be a lot going on at that point. It may be a sudden death. It may be something that you've known for a while, but regardless of the circumstances at that point, it's going to be difficult from an emotional standpoint. And you probably won't be in the right headspace to make a lot of very profound financial and mathematical decisions. And so one of the most important things that we do for clients at that point is walking alongside you and helping you avoid some of those emotional mistakes, some of those pitfalls, some of those irrational decisions that you might make because of the emotional turmoil that you're going through at that point in time. So some of the common ones that we see, people get really protective on this, where they may have had a specific plan for their funds and then just say, look, I really don't want to have any risk. I don't want to have any more stress. I don't want to have any more volatility in my portfolio. I'm just going to take everything, stick it into this specific annuity, stick it in my checking account, stick it in this specific CD, and they go full swing on the opposite side versus having a well put together portfolio that helps them diversify, have the income that they need, have a little bit of risk where it's appropriate, have an optimized portfolio. They just say, look, I know it might not be the right thing, but I want to just do this, whatever that thing may be. And so we want to make sure that we understand your situation, but also make sure that you don't put anything into place that you're going to regret, whether it's a year later, 5 years later, 10 years later. We want to make sure to help you avoid those specific types of decisions. And the other thing that's also very common is that one spouse or the other was the main financial person in their relationship. So whether it was the husband or the wife, we want to make sure that the surviving spouse is taken care of. So one of the specific situations I had was husband was very much the financial situation or the financial person in their relationship. Wife had trusted them and he had done a great job. He unfortunately passed away pretty early in life from a brain tumor. And wife came to us and said, look, I don't really know much about this. I don't know how to handle these things. Can you take care of this for us? Absolutely. That's one of our main focuses at that point, is to just hold your hand through that process, make sure that all of the forms are submitted. You have the right ones to be able to transfer the assets into the surviving spouse's names. Income is continuing. You have the money to pay for your expenses. We want to make sure that even though your rock from a financial standpoint isn't there anymore, we can step in, fill that gap, help make sure that you don't have any issues moving forward, and that you feel taken care of so that you can focus on the most important things, right? Taking care of the funeral, spending time with your kids, with your family, with your relatives. You don't want to be worrying about, hey, did I submit this specific form properly? We want to step in and take care of all of those things for you. So again, it's kind of a focus on avoiding some of those maybe rash or immediate decisions right away. And then also making sure that the continuation of your income, the continuation of that proper planning is done so that you don't have to worry about that at one of the most stressful or emotional points in times in your life. So Brian, what would you add to that at this point?
Well, I think you covered it all. Great job.
So the one last thing I wanted to touch on was a lot of times when you get into your older years or when one spouse passes away, it's a little too late for some of those insurance things that you may have been previously considering. So whether this is life insurance or long-term care insurance, there definitely is a time that can be effective. But again, kind of tying that to the real estate aspect, downsizing is another form of insurance against some of those future risks, right? If you need that additional cash injection, there's multiple ways to be able to tap that equity, whether it be through just pulling out refinancing, a HELOC, anything like that, or outright selling and downsizing. That's a way that you can have additional insurance there. So kind of wrapping up here, we've talked a lot today about the estate planning documents, your will, power of attorney, healthcare directive, and the living trust, making sure that those are properly put into place. You've got them updated. You have the right people in those specific roles for the responsibilities that you want them to have. And then also all of the things that you have to consider when looking at the eventual death of one spouse or the other. So we want to invite you here at Decker Retirement Planning to come talk to us. We can walk you through some of those pitfalls that you may not have considered, help make sure that all of those different things are accounted for, make sure that you're planning properly for Social Security, for IRMA surcharges, for the Medicare stuff there, for pension options, all of those things that are going to be applicable now and have major ramifications down the line when one of you passes away. We want to make sure that you're in a good situation, that it's going to be a good transition at that point in time. So if you have any questions on that, please come talk to us.
So again, that number is 833-707-3030. There's no cost. There's no obligation. There's no pressure whatsoever. The Decker Retirement Planning Team is here to help if they can. They don't know if they can help you until you reach out. But the process is all about you, right? One of the things you need is some clarity into your situation, right? Do we have enough? Are we going to be okay if we retire? Will our money last? That's kind of where it starts, but it's also about your investments. It's about taxes. It's about healthcare. It's about legacy planning that they talked about today. There's just a lot on your plate as a retiree. And I think at the end of the day, it is about sitting down with a team that actually works in the retirement planning world. That's Decker Retirement Planning. Again, if you'd like any of the materials that are on the website, they're sitting there waiting for you to download any or all of them. And it's, again, the website is deckerretirementplanning.com. Find out where the offices are. There's some in Washington, California, and in Utah. DeckerRetirementPlanning.com. Under the heading of Safer Retirement Education, there's Brian's book on retirement, the Decker Approach book, the 3 Principles of Retirement book, the Checklist Challenge. I think there's 35 boxes to check. I'm 65. I think I can check 5. So I guess I'm not retiring anytime soon. There's also a sample income plan, because at the end of the day, do you have the money to maintain your lifestyle month after month after month for as long as you need it? That's really where it starts. And then all the other things come into play. So take advantage of that. DeckerRetirementPlanning.com under the heading of Safer Retirement Education. Download any or all. But at the end of the day, you just want answers. You got questions. You have some concerns. Call Brian Arrin and the team at Decker Retirement. It's 833-707-3030. 833-707-3030. I think it might be one of the more important phone calls you make. 833-707-3030. Brian and Arrin, appreciate the discussion today. You guys enjoy the rest of the weekend. We'll do it again next week.
Thanks, Mark.
Security and insurance services offered by Decker Retirement Planning, a registered investment advisor with the SEC. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual's situation. Decker Retirement Planning is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein, provided by third parties, have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Decker Retirement Planning. This radio show is a paid placement.